12. We've been doing this for 12 days already. So I'd like to welcome everyone wherever you are watching us from. My name is Ruth Dengwani on Her Story Circle TV. And this morning I have with me Kathleen Mahuto, joining us from the UK, and Deborah Molem also joining us from the UK. Welcome, ladies, and good morning.
Good morning, Sis Ruth.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for joining me today again, and thank you so much for coming onto the show as we are talking about the power of education. How can education change people's lives? How can education impact futures and generations to come? Because we know that without education, people are lost. You know, without education, there is no hope. There is no different kind of thinking. And we are saying that the education we're talking about is beyond just the textbook education. We're talking about hearing other people's perspectives, other people's opinions, learning how to do things.
She's frozen.
It's frozen. I hope that's good.
I think we've lost Ruth.
Okay.
Hi, while we are waiting for Ruth to come back, what she's talking about, we are talking about not just academic education, but empowering each other. Because even those with degrees and master's degrees, if they're not empowered, if they don't have self-confidence, they won't go far. So it's about installing self-confidence in our children, in mothers as well, because some mothers are so downtrodden and downbeaten, they don't have a voice anymore. So this is what we're going to discuss today, how important not just education is in schooling, but education is in life education. Okay, Sis Catherine.
Hi, yes, thank you, Deborah. That's very correct that when we look at education, we are not talking of the academic education. Of course, it's part of it because without it, nobody will have the right perspective and the right confidence to face the world that we live in today. So education is more than the textbook itself. Of course, people say charity begins at home. So yeah, if charity begins at home, and you as a parent, you are educated, but you find it that children, your child can stay at home without going to school. I'm sure many parents are facing this dilemma of just thinking their children are not going to school and they cannot afford those children to go to school. It's quite a dilemma, really, with many parents right now. So, as women, as mothers, we would want to encourage that children or people should actually be educated. I remember when we grew up, like in our time, we went to school. Like me, I would say I went to school on the desk up to standard 6. The standard 6 itself was quite enough. But when my parents realized that there's nothing, they didn't manage to send me to the secondary education. They sent me to a domestic science school, which they used to call Homecraft, where I learned the work to do with my hands. And that helped me in the future. Until now, that helps me. If I do want to do something or even make dresses like now, I can still be very productive and even sell those clothes and help myself. I don't have to ask anyone for help because I can use my hands to do that. So those children who are growing up now, those are the things that they need to know, because it's not only going on to enjoy a degree and then you end up on the streets. There's more to the academic process. There's a lot that they can do besides having a degree, because we have seen even in the countries that we live, not everybody goes to the university. Those ones who say I'm a university dropout, you find them doing very well because they learn to do something with their hands, which I would really want parents to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for stepping in. I lost power and connection there for a while. So thank you so much. Yes, I know that the government in Zimbabwe had a program. They'd actually formed a whole new ministry that was dealing with just outside textbook or skills development in schools and training children after even still in primary school. As an educator, you have to identify what the child is good at besides just the textbook intelligence. What else can they do with their hands? Do they love agriculture? Do they love sewing? Do they love cooking? And then channel that's a talent and that gift and nurture it as a school system. So I know that that was one of the big things. I'm not aware of what has happened, because remember, we also have technical colleges here in Zimbabwe. We have, you remember the Kushinga Pikelela,
Yeah.
where those that were interested in agriculture or were talented and gifted in agriculture could go. And we had another, I think, Gwebi also on the west of Harare, where people could go and become farmers. So definitely, yes, we're looking at education beyond the textbook. But coming back to the issue that we've been dealing with, the issue of changing perspective, changing mindsets within communities when it comes to the girl child, when it comes to children. What is it? What are the practical things that uh, us who know better or have experienced differently, maybe not know better, maybe different experience differently, what is it that we can do? How can we share this, disseminate this kind of education, this kind of information with our people? I'll start with you, Deborah.
I find as parents, we say a lot of negative compliments to our children. That affects a child for life. You know what I mean? Chakanyanya kusviba ichi. Koinda usingagone kunge sisi wako. Especially academic. As Africans, we think academic schooling is very, very important. So that that child who's not as clever as the other one will be told all the time. Will be reminded, those kids next door are much better than you guys. You know, that woman in church was saying a kid came number 1 and you were 4. What we hammer into our children is takes away their confidence. They grow up without confidence. We need to try and empower our children. Okay, so your children are not as light-skinned as other kids. They are beautiful. Okay, so your children are not talented academically. Find out what else they can do. Some kids can run. Some kids can use their hands. Very, very creative. We can't all be academic. So don't be careful what you impact on your children, even as young as 3 years old. What we say to our children is, we're not good enough. So they grow up with that mentality that mom said I'm not good enough. Mom said I'm not pretty enough.
And it sticks with them for life.
For life. For life. They don't have confidence. They look in the mirror, they don't see the beauty because you didn't say it was there as a mother. As a father, you didn't say your child was clever enough. So all they see in themselves is stupidity because that's what you said. When your child does something, say thank you. If you are going to advise in a positive manner. Don't just be too negative on your children, because what we are doing is we are stripping our children of confidence, of their identity. They then just grow up copying that one you said is better. They want to be like that one because that's the father said she's better. So I have to be like that one so that father can accept me. You might have 2 children, 3 children. You know what I'm talking about. They all have different personalities. They all have different capabilities, different strengths, different weaknesses. Love them all. If you, I'm not saying love the bad things they are doing. If you are going to correct your children, advise your children positively. Don't keep hammering into the negative all the time. I hate that word stupid. 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 Don't say that. Don't say that.
So correct with love and demonstrate, because most of the times we as parents we forget to see the positive in our children, and we focus on the negative. So the child has been doing well, and then he just does one small mistake, and that's what we focus on. And it's just negative, negative, negative. So, no, we need to change that. We need to speak positively into our children's lives. We need to advise or to correct with love and positivity. Kathleen, how can we?
Yeah, when I look at how we grew up ourselves when we were young, and if another child on the next door neighbor has passed, she's a teacher or she's a doctor, whatever, that used to be the talk of the town. Everyone would be saying, "Mwana wako aningini doctor, my doctor, my nurse in the street," because they really thought that was a breakthrough for them. So that used to impact a very negative way on others who would not have gone forward and become nurses or doctors or teachers. So I believe in every parent, there are things that one parent should learn to give confidence to your child. Is the spoken word, and to be accountable to what your child does at a young stage. Because if you are going to wait until you start telling your child when the child is 21, you are late already. And many times, if they go to school and you see that the child academically is not bright, find another thing that he or she is able to do. Because look at the talent that she has and the strengths of what she's doing. Because we sort of look at the white collar. I think that all of us we used to say, "I want to wear when I grow up. I want to wear this white shirt and a collar." Like the British, this is what we that is what we used to look at. Okay. So now we are now looking at not only being a white collar job, because they are, as it is right now in the 21st century, they've disappeared. So the white collar jobs are no longer there. So what, as parents, what are we saying? We do have to look at the outer side of what others are doing, because we do not have to stay and lag behind when others are progressing and proceeding forward. There is more to education than just the academic one. And also parents should learn to know when to tell their children they have to start at the grassroots and see what the child is good at. It's the spoken word. What do you say to your child? What do you impact your child with? So that that child grows with confidence. It's for the parents.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. What do you say to your child? Because you are the first teacher, you are the first educator for this child. This child is in your presence for at least 3 years, 3, 4 years before you send them into an institution. Yeah. So, what do you say to your child? Welcome, Janet. Thank you for joining us this morning. Introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining us from. Okay, you have to unmute. I admitted you. Let's see if I can. Yes. Now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you. Hi, my name is Janet Longbe. I'm from Malawi. I'm a young lady. I'm a nurse by profession.
Awesome. Welcome to our show. How did you hear
Welcome
about
to
us?
our show. How did you hear about us?
I
Of course,
invited Janet.
I invited Janet.
She's one of
Yeah.
my daughters.
She's one of my daughters.
Awesome, welcome. So are you watching both
Awesome, welcome.
on
So are
it
you
sounds
watching
like
both
you're on
on,
Facebook.
it sounds like you're on Facebook.
There's an echo. Are you
Hello?
on
There's an
two
echo.
devices?
Are you on 2 devices?
No, I'm using StreamYard now.
Okay. So I don't know where
Okay.
the echo
So
is
I don't
coming
know
from.
where the echo is coming
Let
from.
me try and mute
Let
everyone.
me try and mute everyone.
Okay, so
Okay,
you have
so
the issue
have
that we are talking
the issue
about.
that we are talking about.
Can you
Can you
can you mute Janet as
can you
well?
mute Janet as well?
I think the echo is coming
I
from
think the
somewhere.
echo is.
Okay, it's coming from her. Yeah, it looks like. But we need to ask her questions. She must participate in the program. Because I was going to ask you, Janet, the issue that we are talking about is child marriages. And I know that Malawi, in the past, I think 4 to 5 years during President Banda, the lady, had passed a law to ban child marriages. So would love to hear your views, your thoughts on this issue, especially if you are now that you are you're joining us from another country, and what's happening within Malawi. Yeah, unmute you. Yes.
Yes.
Of course, for the past some months, we've been having a increased number in child marriages, and more especially, it was last year from December up to March, where we had COVID cases. So you know that schools were banned, girls and boys were just at home staying. So we had a number of cases of child marriages. Of course, some organizations are taking part fighting so that we can reduce these child marriages. But I know we have in southern part of Malawi, there's some kashas that promote child marriages. But anyway, now we are fighting so that we can decrease those cases.
So these child
So
marriages,
these
are they
child
happening?
marriages are they happening?
Let me mute you when I
Let
ask
me mute
questions.
you when I ask questions.
So these child marriages that are happening, is it amongst teenagers or with older men? I know that in Zim we also have a situation where most of these young girls fell pregnant because they were at home and idle and doing nothing, but it was with their boyfriend, same age. So what I'm asking is, did these girls fall pregnant with their own same age boys or with older men?
No, it's both, because we have rape, defilement, so it's both sides. Whether a boyfriend or a man who is older than a girl, we can say rape, defilement. It's also happening. I have many cases.
So it really sounds like COVID came with a lot of evils um, as well, in terms of these children being idle and not going to school because they were used to being busy. They were kept busy in schools. And when COVID happened and schools were closed for a long time, then people they found themselves with lots of time and energy that they needed to expand it into something else. Very interesting that. What I want us to discuss today is in terms of projects for girls. This is the time that they are at home, they are not doing anything. I know that there's still restrictions, especially here in Zimbabwe. I don't know about Malawi, Janet. You have to tell us what's happening there. There's still restrictions in terms of how many people can gather, how many people can be in the same place observing social distancing and all the protocols. But in terms of what can we do as mothers, what can we do as sisters in really using this time that the children are home, in teaching them, in educating them, in just life skills, I suppose, and empowerment. What is it that we can do? How can we disseminate such programs? Kathleen, I'll start with you. Unmute.
Yep. Yes. This time of the pandemic, I know things have happened. Even here in the diaspora, there's been a lot of concerns regarding to the children because of not going to school because of the restrictions of COVID. And also, it also hampered on the uh, parents as well. Some of them, they ended up divorcing right now, or they are coming out of the pandemic and they are no longer married. The children have been taken away from them because of the pandemic. So there's a lot that has happened and hammered our social life and the social life, especially for the children, that they find themselves pregnant. And also not knowing what next to do with those children because it's time for them to go to school. So I would want to think, if you are a parent at home and you want to help your child, that is if you have the resources to start on a project, because of course restrictions are there, but if you've got a small place where you can start doing your vegetables, probably it's the time to do that. Or also learn how to do cakes, that is if you've got the resources to do that. Or find something that you can actually teach your child to do, because these are the things that we take for granted, and we have maids that will be cleaning the house and doing all those things. It's almost like cake making. There are some cakes which they can start from home doing the cakes. It's also for both the boys and girls. They can start doing that. Yeah, if you have got the resources of like an internet and you can go on YouTube, you can actually teach your child to make a cake from the YouTube, following the instructions there, because those things are there online. So if you have got electricity, it's something that you can do. If there's no electricity, then do a gardening. And also, if there was help where children would go for those a few times that they are supposed to be out there, uh, 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 probably start a project of teaching them in a small confined place that they can do carpentry, painting. It's the hand stuff that needs hands on. That is what parents should actually look at right now, because that is what we are actually facing. And we are not different from any of the countries either. But they are progressing now. There are no more lockdowns in the diaspora. We are here in UK. We are no longer in the lockdown. So
Okay.
yeah, it depends with the country where you are.
Yeah, you over there have been very lucky. We are still in lockdown. The president just extended the lockdown with another 2 weeks, although he's announced that schools will be opening on the 6th of September. Welcome, Abigail Sinzara. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining us from.
Hi, Ruth. Hi, everybody. I'm Abigail, since Ruth has already said. I am in the UK. That's where I'm joining from. I work in mental health and mostly women. So that's my kind of like role.
Thank you so much. In your line of work, Abigail, we just talking about obviously the girl child and we are anti-child marriages, but we are also talking about the role of the mother, the role of the parents in raising this child and giving them opportunities and making them do things differently. So
Mm.
I know that some of the Indians, I think the Indian sects where also child marriages happen. And so maybe from your end, from perspective of first world, do you deal with these kind of issues over there? Child
Yes,
marriages.
not child marriages per se. There is, like you said, in certain cultural entities where children sometimes are forced to marry. However, the government is working really hard in trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. So there is sort of like laws and policies around that. So in my line of work, so if I suspected that someone was going through that, then I have an obligation to report it, and that's investigated and all that. So there is sort of like the government is making all efforts to make sure that children are not taken advantage of, as it were. So a few years ago, there was in the news, I don't know if any of you heard about the Rochdale case where children, sometimes as young as 10, 11, were being abused by males in exchange for things. So, for example, alcohol, takeaways, and stuff like that. And the government did come down quite hard, and these men have been incarcerated for that. So there is quite a lot of work around making sure that children don't get taken advantage of, boys and girls. Um, but like Kathleen said, the pandemic has had quite a lot of impact on families. Um, in my line of work, I meet a lot of women whose children have been taken because it is very difficult, especially if you have young children. Uh, so if you have an age range of young children to teenagers, to be able to manage, especially young parents, where you're used to having the children in school part of the day, and then they come home to you, to having them with you 24/7. A lot of the parents struggled with that, especially the teens. They struggled with being in one space, and we know kids, very social beings. They don't like being in one space. I suppose um, not just being in the house, but not being able to see their friends. So there was a lot of impact on families. Like Kathleen said, there is quite a lot of issues around divorces, a lot of issues around mental health, a lot of issues around domestic violence. Again, because people have been confined in same spaces for a very long time. Um, but there are programs in my line of work where we've started to work with families. We've started to try and, for those families who've lost children in between between the two major lockdowns that we've had, to try and work with social services to reunite and get them back to, try and get the families back together. So for the younger girls, and I know a few younger girls, and I don't know how much everybody knows about mental health and all that. And here in the UK, there is a lot of young girls who struggle with self-harm, who struggle with issues around managing and uh, just managing their themselves in terms of not being in spaces where someone might be able to help them, give them counseling, give them all those things that were provided in schools. Then schools were shut, so they didn't have all that. And that fell back to either hospitals, to mental health services, and professionals like that. So that brought us quite a lot of young people that we would not normally see. In terms of teenage pregnancies, that did go on in certain areas. So there is kind of like portions where you can see the increase, but not on a general overall, increased teenage pregnancies.
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so you find that in areas where there's a lot of deprivation, there is increase in everything. So, the social disparities show off in times like this. So over the last year, particularly, we noticed a lot of the disparities coming forward in terms of how health is dispatched, certain things are dispatched, activities for children are dispatched, things that teenagers can do to, entertain themselves or to keep themselves busy. So because of there's a lot of research now going on around how these disparities can be worked around or, made to become sort of like at par with the different areas of different towns, different sort of like areas, sometimes even of the same town, where you find kids in one area, there's nothing to entertain them, so they tend to get to be involved in crime. They gangs, and then girls, they are more exposed to all that. The violence, the sexual harassment, sexual abuse. So, in a way, the pandemic has brought that to the fore. And so we can start to kind of like look at how do we help, how do we work around those, how do we work with children in those areas, young teens in those areas, what is needed to help them, so that they don't fall prey to usually it's the males probably offering things that young girls want, say shopping, money, whatever. So in my line of work, we are kind of like working around that to try and see how we can help young teens in different areas.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a lot. You've got your work cut out for you, but at least you have structures in place for to deal with. I mean, to intervention structures. You do have that, which is something that we are lacking over here in Africa. We don't always have the structures. We may have the social workers. We may have the counselors on standby, but when it comes to the persecution of the perpetrators, we are really, really lagging behind when it comes to that, And we found so many cases that have gone unprosecuted, and people not having had to account for their crimes, especially when it comes to child abuse and sexual molestation in our case. But what I wanted to find out is these young girls, these young children that come with self-hurts, and you have to deal them. What will be happening? What are the common causes for a child wanting to hurt themselves?
A lot of the times is to do with issues in the family. So if there is domestic violence in the family, if they feel left out, if they feel unloved, if they feel that they are lacking in some way, and it's usually trying to get that attention from a parent to say, this is happening to me. A lot of the girls will have been abused in one way or another. So a lot of the women that I've met, maybe starting from teenagers to even older women who practice self-harm, it's coming from trauma. It's coming from things that have happened to them. So in a way, it's trying to release the stress, the anxiety, all the turmoil that's going on inside. And when they feel they can't speak to someone, then the only way sometimes they find easier is to engage in self-harm.
That's sad, hey? That's so, so sad. But thank you for that information, and thank you for sharing it. Deborah, we were talking about earlier, we were talking about the importance, how important it is to say positive things to our children and creating that safe space and knowing that the children are loved. And Abigail just mentioned that one of the things is, that causes self-harm in children, or even I suppose in adults, is when they feel they are not loved enough. As parents, again, what can we do to show our children that they are loved? Is it there,
We did, we
Deborah?
did, we, we did say yesterday about anger.
Mhm.
Parents, we need to check ourselves. We need to check ourselves. Things get hard. And people ask me all the time, when I was growing up, did you get enough love? And I did, because I understood that my parents were really busy working. They didn't have time to cuddle or listen to me talk when kids were not allowed that leeway to say anything. We have to change the way we are parenting now. We have to talk to these little people. Sometimes they come up with things that to us might seem stupid and irrelevant, but we have to talk to, you have to sit down and listen and talk to them, and they have to feel loved. They have to feel important and relevant. And that anger that you feel for maybe things not working out in your life, maybe relationships, financial problems, whatever, don't take it out on the child. Don't blame the children for wow, things that have gone wrong in your life, because then you push them away. And then they don't feel the love, they don't feel listening. It's listening most of the time. Most kids I talk to say, my mother doesn't listen to me. My mother is very angry. My father is always shouting. He never really talks to us. Because father has got issues, maybe at work, maybe whatever, maybe problems that they grew up with. They also got issues from their childhood that they haven't dealt with. So whatever issues we've got as parents, we need to deal with them before we pass them down to our children. Stop being such a harsh parent. You have times when you are soft as well. And I always say, my kids, I will beat you up. I don't beat up my kids at all. They're just scared of that word. And they know the lines are there, and you don't cross the lines because something might happen. And it has never happened, but the fear that something might happen. We sit down, we laugh. Sometimes they tell me things that I don't even want to know. But ask your kids, how was your day? And listen. Don't be quick to anger, because that anger makes them feel, well, I can't talk to mom. I can't talk to dad.
I think Ruth has dropped, I think.
Yeah, she dropped out.
Oh,
No,
there
no,
she's
no, 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 I haven't. So again, creating loving environments. Janet, I don't
gone.
know whether you are married, whether you have children. Do you want to chime in our parenting um, types or parenting tools? How can we make our children feel safe? How can we let them know that they are loved?
I think she's muted.
Okay, I'm not yet married. I'm just a young lady. Of course, soon will be married, yeah. But of course, okay, I understand we're trying to end child early marriages, but here in Africa, I think we miss something because parents were not open to our girls, our boys, in terms of sexual reproductive things, where I can't go to my mom and say, Mom, let's talk about sex, like telling me that sex is all my friend, my daughter, don't do this. Sex is all about this. So if you do this, the end result is something. But parents were not open to our girls, were not open to our boys. Thereby, we we just say, no, they are learning at school. No, it's not everything that teacher can teach our children in terms of sexual reproductive parts, where they can learn that at this age you're mature. A boy, you can impregnate this girl. A boy can impregnate a girl. So it's one of the reasons why we're having increased number of child marriages, because they are not they're doing they're doing unknowingly. Yeah, so at least here in Africa, let's be open to our children in terms of something to do with sexual reproductive health, whereby they can learn, they can have mind, they can have something that if I do this, my mom said, if I do this, the end result is something. Yeah. So I can't go to my dad and ask my dad, I'm doing this, I have a boyfriend and my boyfriend is asking me no, and then my father will be shouting at me, hey, go away, hey, don't come again. Yeah, so I think that's the one of the problems. Yeah, we're addressing the child marriages, we're trying to fight it, but in other way, we're not open to our children at home. So let's be open to our children. I know there are some teachers they are open, but it's not. They can't tell them anything. They can't tell them the whole story of it. And also the other thing is love is important. We know girls. We we learn, we also get we get inspired, we have many ambitions, dreams that, I want to become like, I want to become this, I want to in future, I want to do this, I want to do this. Yeah, so there are so many things that on our own we can't learn. We need parents to be always there for us, to stand for us, showing us love, telling us what they've been going through, how what happened to them when they were young. Yeah, so it's all about showing love, giving them everything they want, and also teaching them, if you do this, the end result will this. No, my daughter, don't do this, the end result will be this. So at least we can also reduce early marriages cases. Of course, here in Malawi, we're having a lot of child marriages. Mostly it's also poverty. It's poverty. Poverty is also affecting this, it's raising these numbers of child marriages, whereby parents cannot afford to pay school fees for these children. So they just find themselves, no, so what am I doing? I'm just staying at home where my friends are going at school. So at least it's better, I should go for marriage. I should just get married. So poverty is one of the causes, influence of child marriages here in Malawi. And also violence is also another thing. So I think we can take it from there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Janet. It's,
Thank
it's,
you so
it's so
much,
good
Janet.
to
It's so good to
let me mute you.
meet you.
It's good to hear from the young people, and they tell us their perspective and the way they see things. So she spoke about poverty being one of the causes of early marriages, and we know that when people are stuck or when people are in great poverty, you compromise. So they end up thinking, the children end up thinking, maybe it's better if I get married, and just leave this poverty and just get out of this place of poverty, and then they end up in early marriages. But also something that came out that she spoke about is communication, that we as parents, we really need to communicate with our children, because our children want to be heard. All children want to be heard, they want to be seen, and they want to be heard. I know that sometimes when they are young, we're like, oh, children are not meant to be heard, they're meant to be seen. But children really have something to say, and they want to be heard. They want to know that you are hearing them and you understand them. Yes, it's like Abigail said, one of the things, oh, so is it Deborah who said one of the things that comes out when she's talking to the young people is, my parents don't talk to us, or my parents don't understand me. It's not easy, yes, to understand them because they just are complex. They're human beings that are complex, but we have to have that open lines of communication. Let's talk to our children. Let's talk about sex education. Let's teach them, because most of the times then they'll go into this situation unknowingly. They are children, they are young, they think they are playing, not knowing that there's a result, there's a consequence that will come out of that playing, which will be a child, and then they're forced to get together into young marriages, into early marriages. But also, I think for parents, if a child falls pregnant, if a teenager falls pregnant, you don't have to force them to marry that boy. Surely as parents we can step in and just parent that grandchild and make them our own, and let the child go on with her schooling. That's really what I believe, that if my niece or my daughter were to come to me and say, I'm pregnant, um, we have to find a better way. We don't have to send this child into this marriage, because they are still too young to understand what marriage is. It's a mistake. They made a mistake, but can we work around it better, and not force them into a worse situation? Take away the opportunities, make them a mother at that age. It's very hard. Mothering is hard, even at 25, at 30. So imagine a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old. So thank you so much, Janet, for giving us perspective on what's happening in Malawi. We also know that poverty in Zimbabwe is one of the causes of where people are forced into early marriages. We know that when parents don't have food, they would have to sell off. They start selling off their children. They start selling off their daughters and giving them away to older men, to much, much older men in marriages. So thank you for that. I don't know, anyone wants to chime in? We've got about 13 minutes before we close.
Yes. Thank you, Janet, for what you have impacted us this morning. True. I've realized here in the diaspora, children, there is a curriculum of teaching the young children of child sex programs. I think they call it sex education.
Mhm.
And I did hear some of the parents, they were debating how old should the child be taught about sex education, and some were saying no at this age, and some were saying no, even at the young ages she starts going to school, because she's now meeting the world head on from that young age, so she must be made aware that this is what is going to happen because she's growing up. So I think it's important as well to our governments as well in Africa, that and mothers, because a government comes in when you have actually laid the basic, because the child is growing from you, and then you pass the child on to school and on to wherever the child is going into the world. So I think it's most important point that Janet made is teaching the child about sex education. It's important. Our parents never used to tell us anything. Even going for periods, you would end up having your dress is red, and you have not been taught what to do. So it is important that the parents, they know this is a girl child, this is what you go through when you get to this point. You are now 12, 13, expect this. You are a boy, you are now 13, 14, this is what we expect. So definitely, it is the duty of us as parents to tell our children where they are going and what is going to happen as they grow. So as a child, as a child, parents should be ready to teach their child that this is what happens to them. So it is important. Thank you very much, Janet.
Hi.
Deborah?
Yes, it's an issue, especially in our African culture. We don't discuss anything to do with sex or things like that. As a result, you find this is why I said before we have to change the way we parent now from the way our parents parented. Your kids will come to you because now, like back then, sometimes people had aunties and grandmothers, but we are now parenting far, far away from these people who used to intervene and talk to the children. My kids don't have an auntie or a grandmother to talk to about these things, so I have to wear that hat. We have to sit down with our children, whether be boys or girls, and explain these things, especially with safety. If it's going to happen, you have to protect yourself. It's about safety as well, because there's diseases as well that go around that can kill our children. So if we parent like our parents did long time ago, where sex was taboo, you can't even say the word in front of mom, in front of dad, we are misleading our children, because these things are happening out there. We have to talk to our children. We have to sit down and listen to them talk, because sometimes they even know more than we think they know. So some of these conversations that are not comfortable, you have to have them. And keep your door open so that they can come and talk to you. And you can help them. You are their first port of call for help. Otherwise, if you say this subject, I can't talk to you about this subject, they'll go and talk to their friends out there, and their friends are going to give them advice you might not like. They will Google advice. They will talk on social media with their friends on social media, and they're going to get advice that you might not like. So whether you like what they're saying or not, you have to be their first port of call. Talk to your children. This is where the advice then comes from. If they come to you and say uncomfortable things, turn it back to them and say, so what do you think? What do you think you ought to do in this situation? Then you know how they are thinking. You can advise from there, because you know she's thinking of doing this. Oh, I better talk to her out of it. So gone are the days when we used to be told, if you play with boys, you get pregnant. Play with boys. What does that even mean? You know, very, very scary. It's just throwing away that if you play with boys and the child is sitting there like, because nowadays they've got information on their fingertips. That phone you bought them, they've got all the information. She will Google, he's going to Google it. And then he will get information that you don't want him to get. Because you shut your mouth and said, well, I can't talk to him like that. He's only 14. He's developing into a teenager. The body is changing.
Yeah.
And he's got things coming up that you need to address.
Yeah. And when they're going through those changes, there's so much confusion. They don't understand. And if we don't guide them and teach them, yeah, the experiments will happen. I
Yeah.
like it when you mentioned that protection, that they have to protect themselves, and as much as it's painful and horrendous to think about it, we know that the children who experiment, that they'll fall into these temptations and find themselves, I mean, engaging in premarital sex or early sex. And so protection, I think when we speak to our children on sex marriages, we're talking about, we should just mention, we should teach everything, including how can they protect themselves should they find themselves engaging this. With children, the things that you say you must not do, is the things that they chase after, and the things that they do, they become so curious, like, why are they saying that we mustn't do this? Maybe we should do it. And then So if there's protection, then at least we know they're protected from diseases and early marriages. Abigail, your parting thoughts?
Yes, indeed. From what you've said, from what Deborah said, and everybody else has said, it is true. Communication is the key to us imparting knowledge to our kids, imparting information to our kids. And I'll give you just a little example of, I remember a few years ago, I'd gone back home for a funeral and I met a cousin of mine who was only 14 at that time. And her mother was telling me how she almost died in childbirth. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, she got pregnant by this man who has already got 3 wives. And, she was in labor for 3 days. And I was so heartbroken, when you think it's so close to you. And I was like, oh, so why, what are we doing? What are you doing for her? And the mother was like, no, nothing. She's got to go back. That's what she's chosen. That's what she wanted. And I remember this took me almost a couple of hours to sit down with both of them, mother and child, and talk to them and just say, this is not right. She's a child, and you're putting her in a position of being in a marriage because of whatever has happened. She doesn't have to be there. She does not need to be there. She's still a child. I was glad maybe a few months later to know that she'd gone back home. It's this thing of when your child becomes pregnant, and it's normal, or used to be normal, for parents to say, go away, we don't want you here. Go to that boy, go to that man who's caused you all this. And we throw our children into the fire just because we are either embarrassed that they've done this, or we are scared, or we don't actually think of how scared the child might be. So I think for me, that's sort of like the key in parenting, is to realizing that a mistake has been made by a child. We don't have to make that mistake even worse by putting them in that relationship or making them go for that relationship. So my thoughts with that, and I know back home that sometimes, like you said, Ruth, before, there's no structures, there's no, sort of like that formal way of a child who's 12, 13, 14 has been sexually abused. The options would be go and get married. But instead of looking at that as a crime has been committed here, and that needs to be investigated, the person prosecuted. And I think if our government took that on as a standard, then I'm not saying that it's going to end all this, but it might reduce the number of men who are tempted to, abuse kids and abuse these girls, and now even boys. So I think the government needs to take a more sort of like a prosecutive stance, and making sure that we understand that a child is a child up until an age that is, you can make a decision for yourself. I'm not sure at home whether it's 16 or 18. And below that, anyone should be prosecuted for abusing kids, basically, whether it was consensual or not. The child is a child, and as an adult, we should know better.
That's so true. We should know better. And I know that when it comes to, one of the things that I don't understand with our system here back home is we know that a 14-year-old's body is not fully developed in terms of pushing out a child. Why don't we just do C-section on these kids? Why doesn't the doctor or the health workers that are looking at this situation, and they know that this child is not able, because of her body, she's not able to bring out this child normally through your normal delivery path, can't we just do a C-section and bring out the baby and save both baby and mom and the mother? But I know it's also something that I think they don't even discuss. It hasn't been discussed when it comes to early childbirth that are happening in Zimbabwe. Janice, do you have parting thoughts for us before we close off? Unmute yourself if you can. I'm failing to unmute you. Okay. I don't know what's happening with her. I can't unmute you. We wanted to hear. I don't know what's happening with her. I can't unmute you. We wanted to hear.
Hello?
Are we okay?
Yeah, it looks like Janet's okay. So we have to round off and to say goodbye. Hopefully, she will join us again tomorrow. And we would love to hear more of what's happening in Malawi. And Janet, you can invite more people to the show. I'm sure Deborah will share with you the links as we go into this program. Ladies, I want to thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time and coming onto the show. Deborah, Kathleen, Abigail, and Janet, thank you so much. And for those that were watching us on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us. Until tomorrow, same time, 10:30 Zimbabwean time or Southern African Standard Time.
UK 9:30.
Somebody else is UK 9:30. Yes. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow, everyone.